Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about those films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they be underrated or underseen, we're going to chat about them. I'm your host for this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined as ever by my co-host, Alice Oliver. Let's see what it is we're going to talk about. So, Alice, little bit of something different this week. Every now and then
something different. Yes, every now and then we like to take some suggestions
from
our listeners, one from the crowd, and it's called our listener suggestion.
Indeed,
funnily enough, this is the first one of 2024. So listener Mark got in touch, and he reckons that we should take a look at a film called Go from 1999. So Mark says he doesn't necessarily think that it's underrated, but suspects that it might be underseen, and that he looks forward to us tearing one of his favourite films apart and telling him why he's wrong, or confirming his suspicions that it's a slightly better film than it's already given a decent amount of credit for. Either way, he looks forward to the episode and many more from us. So first of all, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you so much for getting in touch with your suggestions. So we're going for Go. So Josh, heard of Go? Watched Go? Seen Go?
So I didn't think I had. And then when I looked it up and saw the poster, I was like, I feel like I've seen that poster. Okay. So I've not seen it before, but I'm not sure if I had heard it before. Then when you look at it, it seems to be largely referred to a little bit online as American Trainspotting. Mm-hmm. It is not American Trainspotting. It's not really. It's not even that. It's just it's got drugs in it.
Yeah, I didn't get that vibe at all. But I'll tell our listeners what it is about, because I forgot the synopsis of the film, which is something we're supposed to do. But Go is a comedy drama, and it's got a real 90s teen comedy vibe, but it isn't set in a school, and deals with some slightly more mature themes, like Josh just mentioned there, a lot about drugs, and than maybe what we're used to in your standard teen comedy. And essentially the film follows the aftermath of a drug deal gone bad, but told from three different points of view. Yes. So we get the same event and then the sort of different repercussions as they happen to the different characters afterwards.
Crazy stupid drugs.
Crazy stupid drugs. Exactly. So that's what the film's about. I also hadn't heard of it or seen it, which is why I was keen to pick it.
So with that in mind then, so neither of us had seen it before, which obviously doesn't often happen with listener suggestions, but that is why we go for them, a little bit like the classics as well. So what did you think about it, and what did you like about it? Did you like it?
So I did actually, I actually had quite a laugh watching this. Yeah? It felt sort of like really easy to watch and like quite digestible, even though like there's the odd thing that's sort of quite dark, and it does get a little bit dark in places, but for the most part, I did think it was a bit of a laugh. And just for some context, earlier that day, I'd been to see Dune in IMAX, right? Which was a very, very intense experience. So I was a bit like, I was a bit sort of filmed out and a bit exhausted sort of thing. So then I put this on in the evening, and I was like, this is just what I needed. This is just what I needed.
It's not heavy, is it? It's not.
No,
it's not too heavy. No, I agree. So what did you like about it then?
So I know we often start here, but I really like the opening sequence, and I think it sets up the vibe of the film really well by the way that it uses like music and editing and lighting and the camera movements. Like, it feels really well thought out and executed, but then also quite scruffy at the same time. And I was just really into it. And I found the impact of the editing was quite effective throughout. So obviously, like we've said, one of the core themes of the film is drugs. So we get a few characters who are tripping and stuff like that. And the way that these sequences are edited together and constructed in general, I actually found quite effective. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there are definitely bits where, I've not a drug, I've never taken drugs or anything, but it's definitely shot to feel like you're on drugs. Do you know what I mean? It's like when they're on it, you're on it. So it's got that really kinetic pace and that really chaotic feel to it, with lots of quick editing and strange camera angles and stuff like that. And obviously that's definitely a definitive choice and stuff like that. So it's directed by Doug Liman, who's gone on to do quite a lot of bigger things, like they did The Bourne Identity, which might have actually been his next film after this, which if you think, that's quite a mad
what a
choice.
Leap. Yeah, what a leap.
He did Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat, whichever you want to call it, with Tom Cruise. He did Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He's done other big, he's a fairly big Hollywood director now. So, this seems to be one of those films he's cut his teeth with in the 90s and stuff like that. And you can definitely see there's that edge of directorial quality and editing to it that makes it that little bit more engaging. I think it's not visually boring in any way.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. There's some great moments of tension building in this as well. So one of our main characters, Rona, so she finds herself in a situation where she's got to give drugs back to the drug dealer, but then she doesn't have the drugs anymore, so uses over-the-counter meds instead. And the whole build-up of her making that decision to do that and then going through with it all was just designed really well and had me feeling really tense, because when he finds out that she's given him fake drugs, the consequences are going to be huge of that and bad things are going to happen, right? And then as the viewer sort of watching this unfold and having all that information, it left me with a bit of a knot in my stomach. And I was like, oh God, here we go. She's going to screw over the drug dealer. That's terrible.
Do you not always think, what do you think's going to happen? Like, they're not known for being reasonable, are they? Do you know what I mean? Like you're going to get shot.
Oh, it was bad.
If you do that. No, overall, I thought so. Yeah, but anyway, what else? Or shall I go into some of my likes?
Yeah, go for it, Josh. Go for it. Take it away.
So I don't think I liked it as much as you did. It's very much felt to me like a film of two halves. The first half I thought was visually interesting, but narratively I just thought it was a bit dull. I wasn't too bothered until at the second half. So after the sort of Vegas stuff, I think I started to get a bit more interested, and I was a bit felt for me, first half was a bit run of the mill, and I felt like I'd seen it before. I wasn't that interested in a lot of the characters. And then the second half, I was like, oh, it's really grown on me. Like it really built up. So regardless of the narrative, like I said, really visually interested and well directed and edited and all that stuff, that's throughout. But the story, I was just like, I was not bothered about the first bit. I found some of the characters a little bit like sort of unlikable and couldn't quite get on board with them. But then it really picked up pace in that second half, and I found myself, I think it was possibly the storyline with the two actors. Do you know what it was? It was the second half is stronger because what they do is, obviously, as you said when you describe the plot, what they do is they show the same story 3 times from different perspectives, but they don't just show the same story. They show the build up to that story and what's going on in the characters from which perspectives you're viewing it from. So what you get is you get a use of perspective to reveal exposition, and I really, really like that. So once it got to that bit where you start getting into that exposition, it came away from the hedonistic style of the first half of the film, and it's almost started to peel back the story layers, and I really enjoyed it as a human story. And whilst I wasn't too bothered on the first half, I think that was probably a choice, because the first half, you don't really know what's going on in that first story. And then when you see the same story again, you do. So in the first half, Rona goes to meet those 2 guys and another guy, and she feels like the guy played by William Fichtner is shifty, and then she decides to make a run for it, and says she's drinking a beer and she's underage, and like that, when I first watched that scene, I was like, what is that all about? But then when you see it again from their perspective, and you realize that he is an undercover police officer and they're actors who have essentially been caught up in it because they've been caught doing something or whatever, then you're like, oh, that's what's going on. So it almost like, because it filled in the blanks, it meant more. Do you know what I mean? It meant more the second time or third time you were seeing that story. So I did enjoy it from that sense. So if anything, the second half fills in the blanks from the first half. So whilst I didn't enjoy it as much, even still, it almost elevated it to a more enjoyable level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I absolutely get that. Yeah, I totally understand.
I thought it was darkly funny as well. The bit where he has a little sort of moment where is it in his head he's doing the Macarena in the shop.
With the woman,
with the customer,
the
bit where you think that they're building tension with the police officer and the 2 actors, and then you realize that there's what you think something's really twisted is going to go on, and actually it's just that they're trying to get them to go into a pyramid scheme. I thought that was really funny and stuff like that, and great soundtrack as well, I thought. Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good soundtrack. Very of its time, but good of its time.
Soundtrack. Yeah, and I thought that the use of the songs was really good as well. And it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because there was a lot of songs in this, but it didn't ever feel like forced or unnecessary or just like annoying as it does sometimes. And I know I've said this before loads of times, but I love it when songs move in and out of being diegetic to non-diegetic. They're listening to the song on on the radio in the car, but then suddenly it becomes non-diegetic and it's like this huge sort of part of the scene and stuff. And Steal My Sunshine is one of my favorite songs. And like that was really prominent in this. So
yes,
I was a huge fan. Loved the way it sounded. Really loved it.
Okay, so we'll move on then to anything we didn't like about Go or anything we might change. Now, Mark has said he looks forward to us ripping it apart. Are we going to rip it apart for Mark? We're going to rip Mark apart, Mark. Mark apart.
So Mark. I'm not. I reckon you are. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say about this. Yeah, but there's literally only like
bloody stop. Am I right?
He's got you there, Mark. He got you there.
Mark. What do you think about that?
Egg on your face.
Yeah, get that, Mark.
There's really only two things for me here, and neither of them are major offenders. So I did think at times it was just a little bit slow in terms of like the character interactions and the dialogue choices. So it did feel like there were a few scenes with the action. It just isn't moving the story along. And I'm also not really learning anything new about the world or the characters. So maybe a few tweaks to the script there might have enhanced it, but it wasn't really a massive deal. And then just the other thing. So there's the scene where, so when they're on their way to Vegas, so Simon is in the boot of a car. I think his friends have put him in there as a joke or something. Like
I think he's meant to have passed out.
Right, so they chucked him in the boot.
And they chucked him in the boot or something. Or it's that there's no space. It might be because there's four of them, so it must be that there's space in the car, right?
Well, and he's in there later, and he's like in the back
I think he's maybe passed out. Or they're just dicks, I don't know.
Yeah, just a bit of friendly banter. Friendly banter. Throwing him in the boot.
What a laugh, you know.
Classic. And he uses a lighter to sort of light up the boot so he can see. And the light coming from the lighter is so powerful. Like it's like he's got an incredibly powerful torch with him. Yeah, and I was just like, that's like a bit of a funny, weird little gaff sort of thing where it's like, no, the lighting team or whoever have used too much lighting and now it doesn't feel natural sort of thing. So just a really small thing, but I did notice it, so I had to bring it up. Yeah. What about you? Was there anything you didn't like or would change?
So I'm not going to rip it apart.
There you go.
I've touched on it a little bit. So yeah, the second half, I think, really elevated the film, and that exposition through perspective really, really helped. But I still thought the first half was a lot weaker. So as I've said, as I might have touched on earlier, the Vegas plot line I just wasn't bothered about. I've seen that storyline done in every decade for like the last 50 years of, you know, shagging, drugs, violence, you know, all that, lads on tour. I've just seen it done. It's played out. I'm not bothered about it, stuff like that. The first and the third the first storyline with Rona, particularly storyline with the actors, is particularly much stronger. I thought that some of the characters were like, particularly those characters in that scene, were just unlikable. Like Simon as a character, and the other ones whose names I don't even know. The only one I thought that was likable in of all of them was the one played by Taye Diggs. The other three, I was just like, you're all just unlikable bellends. I hope they shoot you. Like I'm just not bothered. Really, just didn't like them. Not, you know, wasn't interested. So yeah, wasn't. It felt like that was particularly done, and that first half was a bit like there was an element of it was too hard to follow, but I also appreciate that may be the point, which is why the exposition comes in and sort of peels back those layers, if you like. But you know, and there was an element of sort of a bit like, what's the point? Like, is this a film that they've come up with a mechanism and then gone? You know, that whole perspective things. I mean, we've seen that in Rashomon and other films, haven't we? Of like of perspectives, but the perspective isn't the same story. It is the same story told, but actually it's not. It's three different strands of the same series of events, isn't it? It's not like, whereas Rashomon is the murder of someone told the same time over and over again, and it's all about how you remember something. This is all to do with perspective and just seeing it and actually exploring exposition through that. So there was an element of like, is it just a function they've come up with and then written around that? But I don't particularly mind that, but I did think some of the characters were unlikable, and I would have liked perhaps a little bit more, because it's all, the majority of it seems to be exploring young people and their hedonistic lifestyles and their use of drugs and stuff like that. For my personal taste, I would have liked a little bit more around maybe social context and what they're doing and the time that they're doing it and the time in their lives that they're doing stuff like that. Having said that, that might be because I went into it being told it was American Trainspotting.
Yeah.
And it's not American Trainspotting. It's nothing. It's just got drugs in it. It's no more, you know, it's It's no more American Trainspotting than it is, fucking American somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so that's about it for me. It wasn't, just a couple of little things in there. Wouldn't be in a massive rush to watch it again, but I definitely got something from it and enjoyed it, and can see why you would like it. Okay, so let's move on to talking about the critical reception then, and we can decide if we think it is underrated, underseen. So Mark thinks it deserves to be seen by more people, but he's not sure about the underrated side. That's just to remind everyone. So let's hear the scores then, Alice, and let's try and figure out how it did, and if we can have a look at the box office as well, we'll do that.
Well, we'll have a wee guess there, shall we, Josh?
How it did critically.
How do you think it did, and what would you give it?
I think that, so I would say this is sort of solid 6 out of 10 film for me. Thought it was, it's decent. I'd give it about that. I think it probably did. I wonder if this has got a bit of a cult following, so I think the audience have probably been quite kind to this, but also I can imagine the critics at the time quite liking it. It seems like it's got some interesting devices in there that you would think, oh yeah, that's that's doing something a little bit different for the time, or whatever. You can definitely see that this is around the time that things like Fight Club and The Matrix were made. You can see that sort of era of filmmaking's all over this. So I think it's probably going to average out maybe 6.5, 7, something like that. But I might be wrong in terms of box office. I think we're probably going to definitely say it's underseen.
Okay,
right. So go on, lay it on me.
Well, here you go, Josh. So I'll be interested to know what you make of this. So at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets 7.2.
Okay.
And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 78%.
Yeah.
And then the critics give it 91%.
Jesus. So that averages out.
Try that on for size.
80%. I mean, what would you give it? What would you give it?
I mean, not 91%.
Not 91%. No. 91%. That's high. Look, Mark has said that. He's not said it's high. He's just said it's not underrated. So I don't think he'll be unhappy to hear that we don't think it's underrated. I would say that's probably a little overrated. If I was being kind, I'd say that IMDb score's okay, but for me, it's not that score. So I'd say it is overrated. What about the box office? Well, would you agree? Sorry.
No, yeah, I would agree, because for me, I'm probably giving this like probably 7, like max.
Yeah, so we're not too far apart in our reviews, are we?
So box office wise, really difficult to find any sort of consistent numbers on this. But from what I can see, so the budget was about $20 million and box office, it made $28.5 million.
Yeah. So
made it back, but we're not talking like massive amounts of profit.
Not. Yeah. For me, sorry, go on after you.
Well, I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because of who's in it.
Like, and what they went on to do as well.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, it's one of those where you look back at it and it's like, oh my God, it's that. What was it we did? Oh gosh, Get Over It. Was it with the Midsummer Nights?
with Rihanna and Ben Foster was in it, and Kirsten Dunst and
everyone, and Mila Kunis and
Mila Kunis,
Cisco in it.
Was in it inexplicably. Yeah. This is one of those, isn't it? Katie Holmes, Jay Moore,
all the lads, like the lads that go to Vegas.
Breckin Meyer, the guy from Independence Day.
And then obviously Oliphant as well. Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant as well. Yeah, a lot of those people are still fairly big stars now. So it's definitely one of those films where you can see this is like the studio being like, this is going to be the film that everyone goes, oh, everyone was in that.
Yeah, and I'm surprised, given the sort of films, like the sort of films that I was watching at the time, or like the sort of films that I watched when I was a teenager, were all very much like this.
Yeah,
and
maybe I never made it over
heard of it.
Maybe. It could be one of those ones that just didn't get a big UK release or whatever. Quite often that does happen every now and then. It's like how country music hasn't quite made it over here in the same way it has in the States, or we just cannot get them to like Robbie Williams, whatever we do. We can keep shoving him down their throats in the 90s, but they will not take to him. She's the one. It's a good song, guys. Come on. Going back to those box office numbers, for me, I think that's underseen, and I think it's probably underseen now. I don't think loads of people are checking this out, maybe it isn't one of those films you're thinking Saturday night takeaway, let's put on Go from 1999. But I definitely think if you're interested in this sort of film and sort of subject matter, There's definitely an audience for it, I'd say. So I'd say, Mark, it is underseen. What do you reckon, Alice?
Yeah, I do reckon it's underseen. And I think, like, from a technical point of view, there's a lot in there to sort of appreciate and to take away from it. So I think if you're just into like filmmaking and sort of different styles and different techniques and editing techniques especially, then I think you'd really get a lot out of this.
Yeah, there we go then, Mark. Overrated, but you did. You're not bothered about that, Mark. Sorry about that, Mark. But underseen definitely, which is what you've said. So we'll give you that one, Mark. In it slides into the listener suggestions underseen shelf of the vault.
So there we go then. Our first listener suggestion of 2024. Go a bit overrated, but definitely underseen. So we fit
Which is
the
why
format.
You picked it.
Yes, and we fit the format of the podcast, and that's the main thing. So thank you so much, Mark, for getting in touch. And listeners, please do get in touch with your recommendations. We do like to see them all, and they all go in a great big list, and we'll just pick them off as the years go on. So thank you, as always, for getting in touch. But anyway, next week, Josh, what are we going to be talking about?
Yes, next week we are going to be talking about Sing Street.
Okay.
Indeed.
Sing Street.
Yes.
Like singing, like S-I-N-G.
On a street.
On a street.
You know streets
sounds fun.
where you live.
I
and
do
stuff.
know streets. Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know sing, the verb to sing.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
That. Sing
All
Street.
right.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun. Okay.
So yeah, join us next week where we're going to talk about my latest pick, which is Sing Street. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X/Twitter, TikTok. We're on YouTube as well. If you just search for Just Films and That, you'll find us. We're on Patreon as well. So if you'd like to support us and get a little bit of extended bonus content a day early and without adverts, click the link in the show description and you can support us at any support would be hugely appreciated, of course. So, and we're also as well on the television. Take it away, Alice.
Oh, yes, we are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. And what that means is that if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. And I'm also uploading all the videos onto Dailymotion. So if you head on over there and search for Just Films and That, we'll pop up and you'll be able to see exactly what it is we're up to.
Yes, lots of ways to see us, hear us, get in touch with us. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.